The massive KRYL warships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling mountains of steel and fire. Their shadows stretched across entire cities as they took position above New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, and Sao Paulo. The vessels were enormous, each one larger than any human aircraft carrier, their hulls gleaming with alien metal that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. On the lead ship, Ambassador General Vuthran stood before the communications array, his 3 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. He had done this 47 times before on 47 different worlds. The pattern was always the same. Show overwhelming force, deliver the ultimatum, watch them surrender. Simple. Efficient. Civilized. Broadcast on all their frequencies, Vuthran commanded his crew. Every screen on Earth flickered. Every radio went silent. Then his face appeared, alien and terrifying, speaking through a translator that made his voice sound cold and mechanical. People of Earth. I am Vuthran of the KRYL hegemony. Your world now belongs to us. You have exactly 72 hours to comply with our demands. Dismantle all weapons. Dissolve all governments. Prepare to accept KRYL rule. If you refuse, we will burn your cities from orbit. There will be no negotiation. There will be no second chance. You will kneel or you will die. The transmission ended. Across the planet, chaos erupted. People ran through streets screaming. Governments scrambled to respond. Military forces went on high alert, though everyone knew their missiles and jets were useless against ships that had crossed the stars. In Geneva, deep beneath the United Earth Council building, President William Marshall sat at the head of an emergency meeting. His hands were steady but his face was pale. Around the long table, leaders from every nation shouted over each other. We must negotiate, the Chancellor from Europe insisted. Negotiate what? Our slavery? Snapped the African Union representative. We have to fight, someone else yelled. Fight with what? They'll destroy us. William raised his hand and slowly the room fell silent. Beside him sat Commander Elizabeth Hayes, head of Earth Defense Command. She looked calm, almost eerily so, her fingers steepled in front of her face. Commander Hayes, William said quietly. Tell them. Elizabeth stood slowly. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with gray hair pulled back tight and eyes that had seen too many classified briefings. When she spoke, her voice cut through the tension like a blade. 83 years ago, in 1947, something crashed in New Mexico. We told the public it was a weather balloon. It wasn't. It was a probe sent by a species we still don't know. That probe carried weapons that could have sterilized our planet. It malfunctioned and crashed before it could complete its mission. The room was silent now. That day our leaders made a decision. Never again would humanity be helpless. We formed a secret international project, hidden from the public, hidden from almost everyone. For 8 decades we've been building. Preparing. Waiting. Preparing what? Someone whispered. Elizabeth pressed a button on her tablet. The lights dimmed and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed the outer solar system, far beyond Neptune, in the cold darkness of the Kuiper Belt. Dozens of locations were marked in red. Shipyards, Elizabeth said simply. Hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids. Completely automated. Powered by fusion reactors we developed in secret. For 80 years they've been building warships. Thousands of them. That's impossible, someone breathed. We've spent $3 trillion on this project. Money siphoned from black budgets, hidden programs, funds that officially went to satellites and space stations. Every major nation contributed. Every major nation knew. Except the public. William Marshall stood now, his voice heavy. We called it Protocol Midnight. The plan we hoped we'd never need. And now, someone asked. Elizabeth's smile was cold. Now we activate it. The KRYL gave us 72 hours. That's exactly how long we need to bring the fleet online and position it for attack. But they'll detect it. They'll see the ships coming. They'll see them, Elizabeth agreed. But by then it'll be too late to run. She pressed another button. Across the Kuiper Belt, in the frozen darkness 3 billion miles from Earth, red lights began flashing in dozens of secret facilities. Massive bay doors opened. Engines that had been dormant for decades roared to life. And slowly, one by one, warships began to move. They were black as space itself, angular and ugly, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. No elegant curves, no shining hulls. They looked exactly like what they were. Instruments of war built by a species that had perfected killing its own kind. The Black Armada was waking up. William looked around the table at the frightened faces. Contact the KRYL. Tell them we want to negotiate. Keep them talking. Keep them confident. Let them think we're afraid. Aren't we? Someone whispered. Elizabeth's voice was ice. No. We're angry. Ambassador Thomas Garrett stepped into the KRL shuttle with his heart pounding in his chest. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady hands, a diplomat who had spent 30 years negotiating treaties between nations. But he had never negotiated with aliens who wanted to enslave his entire species. The shuttle carried him up to the KRYLL flagship orbiting above the Atlantic Ocean. Inside, the corridors were massive and cold, built for creatures larger than humans. KRYLL soldiers watched him pass, their armor gleaming, their weapons held ready. They thought he was helpless. That was good. Vuthran waited in a large chamber that served as a conference room. The alien ambassador sat behind a curved table, his 3 eyes watching Thomas with amusement. 2 guards flanked the door. Ah, the human comes to beg, Vuthran said, his translator making his voice sound like grinding metal. I expected this. Your kind always begs in the end. Thomas sat down across from him, placing his briefcase on the table. I'm here to offer you a deal. Vuthran's laughter was a harsh, barking sound. You offer me a deal? Human, I have studied your world. Your weapons are primitive. You have no energy shields. No antimatter reactors. No faster-than-light travel of your own design. You are children playing with fireworks while we command the power of stars. We're not as primitive as you think, Thomas said calmly. Really? Vuthran pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's military forces. Tanks, jets, aircraft carriers, missiles. These are your weapons. We fought wars with better technology 3,000 years ago. One of my ships could destroy your entire planet's military in an afternoon. Thomas opened his briefcase and pulled out a small data chip. Before you make your final decision, I want you to see something. Vuthran waved a clawed hand dismissively but inserted the chip into his console. More begging, I assume. Perhaps a list of your most important cultural. His words died. His 3 eyes widened. On the holographic display, images began to appear. Ship after ship after ship. Thousands of them. Long and angular, black as the void of space, covered in armor plating and weapons arrays. The computer began scrolling through technical specifications. Mass driver cannons, nuclear-pumped lasers, kinetic kill missiles, fusion warheads. What is this? Vuthran's voice had lost its confidence. That's the Black Armada, Thomas said quietly. Our fleet. We've been building it for 83 years, ever since we had our first contact with hostile alien technology. Impossible. Our scouts surveyed your system. They would have detected construction on this scale. Thomas smiled without humor. Your scouts looked at Earth. They looked at Mars. They looked at our inner system where we build our space stations and satellites. They never thought to look at the Kuiper Belt, 3 billion miles away in the frozen darkness. That's where we built our shipyards. Inside asteroids. Completely hidden. Vuthran was scanning the data frantically now. These ships have no shields. No energy barriers. They're vulnerable. We don't need shields, Thomas replied. Shields require enormous power. They slow you down. They make you think you're safe. Our ships are fast and covered in thick armor. They're designed to take damage and keep fighting. And there are thousands of them. This must be a fabrication. Computer simulations meant to frighten me. Thomas leaned forward. Then call my bluff. Fire on our cities. See what happens. Vuthran stared at him, his 3 eyes searching Thomas's face for any sign of deception. Your species would never build such weapons. The other races we've conquered, they were peaceful. Advanced. Civilized. They valued life. So did we, Thomas said. But we learned something they never had to learn. Between 1914 and 1945, we fought 2 global wars. We killed over 100 million of our own people. We invented weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We learned how to fight total war where nothing matters except victory or death. He pulled up more images on the display. Old photographs from Earth's history. Trenches filled with bodies. Cities reduced to rubble. Mushroom clouds rising over Japan. We fought each other with poison gas, firebombs, atomic weapons. We starved entire populations. We bombed civilian cities. We did things that horrified us, and we kept doing them because we learned one terrible truth. In real war there are no rules. There's only winning or losing. Vuthran's claws gripped the edge of the table. You're bluffing. You must be. Thomas stood up. Every species you've ever conquered surrendered because they were civilized. They valued culture and art and the sanctity of life. They couldn't imagine fighting the way we fight. He walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back. We're not better than them, Vuthrin. We're worse. And that's why you should leave while you still can. Vuthrin's hand moved toward the weapons authorization panel on his console. His pride wouldn't let him retreat. Not from primitive humans. Not after 47 successful conquests. Thomas saw the movement and spoke one word into his hidden communicator: execute. 3 billion miles away, the Black Armada began its attack run toward Earth. Admiral Robert Kane stood on the bridge of the EDS Defiant, watching the holographic display that showed Earth surrounded by KRYL warships. He was 60 years old, with white hair and scars on his hands from a naval battle he had fought decades ago. He had trained his entire life for this moment, hoping it would never come. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Lieutenant Catherine Moore from the tactical station. She was young, barely 30, but her voice was steady. Robert nodded slowly. "Send the signal. All ships weapons free. Execute attack pattern Alpha." The command went out across 3 billion miles of space in an instant, transmitted through quantum communicators that couldn't be intercepted. And in the darkness beyond Neptune, the Black Armada began to move. On the KRYL flagship, alarms suddenly screamed. Sensor stations erupted with warnings. The officer monitoring long-range detection looked at his screen and his face went pale. "Contact," he shouted. "Multiple contacts. Hundreds of them. No, thousands." Vuthrin spun toward the display. "What? Where did they come from?" "They're coming from the outer system, moving at high speed. I'm reading 3,500 individual ships." The holographic display updated, showing the Black Armada approaching. They came in waves, tight formations of angular black ships that looked like sharks moving through dark water. No lights, no identification markers, just weapons and armor and engines burning bright. "Impossible," Vuthrin whispered. "No one could hide a fleet that large. They're accelerating. Time to contact, 18 minutes." Vuthrin's 3 eyes blazed with anger. "All ships, battle formation. Charge weapons. These primitives dare to attack us? We'll burn them from space." The KRYL fleet moved into position, their elegant ships forming defensive patterns perfected over thousands of years of warfare. Energy shields powered up, glowing bright blue around each vessel. Plasma cannons charged. Antimatter torpedo bays opened. On the Defiant, Robert watched the KRYL preparations calmly. He had studied every battle the KRYL had ever fought. He knew their tactics. They always used shields. They always fought at long range. They always assumed their technology would win. "Range in 5 minutes, Catherine reported. "Enemy weapons charging. Hold formation. All ships maintain speed. Don't slow down." "Sir, they're going to fire on us at maximum range. We'll take heavy casualties before we even get close." "I know," Robert said quietly. "Send a message to all ships. Remember why we're here. Remember what they threatened to do to our families. Hold nothing back." The message went out. In 3,000 ships, human crews prepared themselves. Some prayed. Some looked at pictures of their children. Some simply gripped their stations and waited. The KRYL fired first. Lances of superheated plasma shot across space at the speed of light. Antimatter torpedoes streaked toward the human fleet. The attack was devastating. 20 human ships exploded instantly, torn apart by weapons that could vaporize mountains. 40 more were crippled, their hulls breached, atmosphere venting into space. But the Black Armada didn't slow down. "They're not stopping," the KRYL weapons officer shouted in disbelief. "They're accepting catastrophic losses and still advancing." Vuthrin stared at the display. Every other species he had fought would have retreated after losing 60 ships in the opening salvo. But the humans kept coming, flying through the wreckage of their own destroyed vessels. "Fire again. Destroy them all." The KRYL fired a second volley. Another 100 human ships died. And still they came. On the Defiant, an explosion rocked the ship. "Hull breach on deck 7, someone shouted. "Engineering reports 40% power loss." "Keep going," Robert ordered. "All ships close to point-blank range." The human fleet crashed into the KRYL formation like a hammer. At close range, the elegant KRYL battle tactics fell apart. Human ships swarmed around the larger KRYL vessels, dozens attacking each one from every direction. Mass driver cannons fired tungsten rods at incredible speed, punching straight through KRYL shields. The shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, but they couldn't stop solid metal moving at a fraction of light speed. The rods tore through armor plating like bullets through paper. Swarms of AI-controlled drones launched from human carriers, thousands of small craft that overwhelmed KRYL point defenses. They attached to hulls and detonated, blowing holes in the enemy ships. Human frigates fired nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers at close range, the radiation burning through KRYL armor. When KRYL ships tried to pull back, human destroyers rammed them, their crews sacrificing themselves to cripple targets 10 times their size. "This is insane," Buthern screamed. "They fight like animals. Like barbarians." His tactical officer shouted back, "Sir, we've lost 20 ships. Our formation is collapsing. Rally the fleet. We outnumber them." But the KRYL had never fought an enemy like this. An enemy that treated every ship as expendable. An enemy that didn't care about honor or rules of engagement. An enemy that had learned warfare in the bloodiest conflicts their own world had ever seen. 6 hours later, the battle was over. The KRYL fleet was shattered. 31 ships remained, damaged and burning. Vuthran's flagship drifted without power, life support failing. Robert's face appeared on Vuthran's screen. "You're going home. Take your ships and leave. Tell your leaders what happened here. You fight without honor." "We fight to survive," Robert said coldly. "Now go. And never come back." The Galactic Council chamber on the neutral world of Paxis was in chaos. 200 species had representatives there, and all of them were shouting at once. The massive circular room echoed with angry voices in 100 different languages, all translated simultaneously into a cacophony of sound. At the center of it all, a holographic recording played on repeat. The Battle of Earth, captured by KRYL sensors. Human ships charging through devastating fire. Ramming attacks. Swarm tactics. Nuclear weapons detonating in close quarters. Wreckage spinning through space. Ambassador Helen Wright stood at Earth's podium, waiting for silence. She was a stern woman with iron gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She had been a soldier before becoming a diplomat, and it showed in the way she carried herself. The KRYL representative, a younger ambassador named Talvek, pointed a clawed finger at her. "Barbaric. Your species violated every convention of civilized warfare. You used kamikaze attacks. Artificial intelligence weapons. You sacrificed your own people without hesitation." Helen's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "We violated conventions we never agreed to. You came to our world uninvited. You threatened to burn our cities. You gave us 72 hours to become your slaves. What exactly did you expect us to do? Send you a formal complaint?" A delegate from the Vrnin species, a tall crystalline being that glowed with soft blue light, spoke next. "Ambassador Wright, your tactics disturb us all. The way your species fights. It is not how war is conducted in civilized space. We have rules. Protocols. We value life." Helen laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You value life? You've conquered 40 species. You forced them to give up their freedom, their culture, their independence. And you call that valuing life?" She pulled up images on the display. Old footage from Earth's history. Soldiers in trenches, cities burning, atomic bombs exploding. "Let me tell you about valuing life. Between 1914 and 1918, we fought a war that killed 17 million people. We used poison gas. We drowned men in mud. We shot boys who were too scared to climb out of trenches. And when that war ended, we said, never again." The chamber was quieter now, watching the horrific images. "Then, 20 years later, we did it again. Bigger. Worse. We killed 60 million people. We bombed entire cities full of civilians. We built weapons that could vaporize 100,000 people in 1 second. We did things that still make us sick to remember." Helen's voice grew harder. "But we learned something you've never had to learn. We learned that when someone threatens your home, your family, your children, there are no rules. There's only survival. You fight with everything you have, and you don't stop until the threat is gone." Talvek slammed his hand on his podium. "The hegemony will not tolerate this insult. We are preparing a new fleet, 10 times larger than the first. We will return to Earth and finish what we started." "Please do," Helen said calmly. "It will save us the trouble of coming to find you." The chamber erupted again. The council leader, an ancient being from a species that had founded the council 5,000 years ago, raised multiple limbs for silence. "Ambassador Wright, are you threatening the KRYL hegemony?" "No," Helen replied. "I'm making a promise. If they come back, we'll destroy them. If anyone else attacks Earth, we'll destroy them too. We don't want war. We never did. But we won't be victims." She pulled up new images. Footage of human shipyards now operating openly. Construction facilities on the Moon, on Mars, in orbit around Jupiter. thousands more ships being built. For 80 years we built in secret. Now we're building in the open. We're expanding our fleet. We're developing new weapons. And we're establishing military outposts throughout our system. A small delegation from a species called the Tauren, who had been conquered by the KRL 60 years ago, spoke up. Their representative was timid, clearly afraid. Ambassador Wright, if the KRL attack you again, would Earth help others who resist them? Helen paused, choosing her words carefully. Earth's primary concern is Earth's safety. But we believe every species has the right to defend itself. If others want to resist oppression, we won't stop them. And we might be willing to share some of our technology. The room erupted again, but this time it was different. The species that had been conquered, the ones forced into the hegemony against their will, were whispering among themselves. A spark had been lit. Talvek stood, rage in his 3 eyes. This council will hear of the KRYL response. We will mobilize our full military might. Earth will burn. You tried that already, Helen said quietly. It didn't work. But if you want to try again, we'll be ready. In fact, we're counting on it. Over the next weeks, secret communications began flowing to Earth. Small species, oppressed worlds, colonies that had been forced into servitude. They all asked the same questions. How did you resist? How did you win? Can you help us? And from the KRYL homeworld, a massive fleet began to assemble. Pride demanded revenge. Honor required retaliation. They would show these primitive humans what it meant to challenge the hegemony. But intelligence reports reached Earth showing something else. The KRYL were afraid. Their carefully controlled empire was showing cracks. Conquered species were quietly building weapons. Supply lines were being sabotaged. Colonies were refusing to send resources. Robert Kane stood in the Earth Defense Command Center, reading the reports with grim satisfaction. They're coming, Catherine said beside him. Good, Robert replied. This time we're ready. The KRYL Revenge Fleet was the largest armada ever assembled in galactic history. 500 capital ships, 2,000 support vessels, enough firepower to sterilize a dozen planets. They gathered at the edge of KRYL space, their commanders confident that this time, the primitive humans would learn their place. Fleet Commander Rethak stood on the bridge of the super dreadnought Eternal Victory, studying tactical displays. He had brought 10 times the force that Vuthran had commanded. This would not be a battle. It would be an extermination. All ships report ready, his second officer announced. Course laid in for Earth. We can begin the jump in 1 hour. Excellent, Rethak said. Prepare a message to broadcast when we arrive. I want the humans to know they're about to die. But the fleet never reached Earth. The attack came from nowhere. Human ships appeared out of faster-than-light jumps at impossible locations, hitting KRYL supply convoys light years from the main fleet. Automated mines, released weeks earlier, activated in KRYL patrol routes. Shipyards building new vessels suddenly exploded, sabotaged by infiltration drones smaller than a human hand. Sir, we're receiving reports from home, an officer shouted. Our supply bases are under attack. The mining colonies at Vector have gone silent. 3 shipyards have been destroyed. Rethak stared at the reports flooding in. How are they everywhere at once? What he didn't know was that humanity had spent the last 6 months deploying their full strategic doctrine. While the KRYL gathered their revenge fleet, human ships had been spreading throughout KRYL space. Fast raiders with experimental jump drives that could appear and disappear before defenders could respond. Long-range stealth ships that could drift for weeks without detection, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Earth had studied the KRYL empire carefully. They knew where every shipyard was located, every supply route, every military base, and they systematically destroyed them all. Robert Kane watched from Earth as reports came in. We're not fighting their fleet, he had explained to the Earth Council months ago. We're cutting off their ability to wage war. No supplies, no reinforcements, no safe harbors. We turned their size against them. Catherine stood beside him, monitoring the attacks. The Tauren resistance has seized 3 KRYL colonies. The Mervac species just declared independence. The empire is collapsing from within. Good, Robert said. Let's finish this. The human fleet didn't meet the KRYL Armada in open battle. Instead, they bypassed it completely and jumped directly to the KRYL homeworld. 3,000 human warships appeared in orbit around the planet where 4 billion KRYL citizens lived. Rethak received the transmission and felt his blood turn cold. The tactical display showed Earth's fleet surrounding his homeworld while his own massive armada was 3 days' travel away, too far to help. Robert Kane's face appeared on every screen across the KRWL homeworld. He looked tired, older than he had 6 months ago, but his voice was firm. People of the KRWL hegemony. I am Admiral Robert Kane of Earth. Your fleet is currently 3 days away from here. In that time we could destroy your world. We have weapons that could sterilize your planet from orbit. We could do to you what you threatened to do to us. Panic spread across the KRWL homeworld. Citizens fled into underground shelters. The Planetary Defense Force powered up their weapons, knowing they couldn't stop 3,000 warships. But we won't, Robert continued. We didn't come here to commit genocide. We came here to end a threat. So I'm giving you the same choice you gave us. Surrender, accept our terms and live. Refuse and face the consequences. The KRWL High Council convened an emergency session. They argued for 6 hours while the human fleet waited silently in orbit. Some demanded they fight to the last. Others begged for mercy. Finally, the council leader made the decision. The KRWL surrendered. The terms were harsh but not cruel. The KRWL would dismantle their military fleet, keeping only defensive forces. All conquered species would be granted independence. The KRWL would pay reparations to Earth for the cost of the war. And they would accept human observers to ensure compliance. Most importantly, the KRWL would sign the Terra Doctrine, a new treaty that was spreading throughout the galaxy. Helen Wright presented the doctrine to the Galactic Council 1 month later. The chamber was quiet now, no longer filled with shouting. Earth had everyone's attention. The Terra Doctrine is simple, she explained. Earth will not conquer. We will not build an empire. We will trade freely with anyone who wants to trade. We will share defensive technology with any species that asks. But we will tolerate no aggression against Earth or our allies. She paused, looking around the chamber. Any species that attacks Earth or threatens our people will face the full might of the Black Armada. We won't negotiate. We won't accept apologies. We will simply remove you as a threat. Permanently. The Tauran delegate stood, speaking hesitantly. What about species like us? Ones who were conquered and want to be free. Defend yourselves, Helen said. We'll provide weapons, training, and support. But your freedom is your responsibility. We won't fight your wars for you. We'll just make sure you have the tools to fight them yourselves. Over the following year, 42 species declared independence from various empires. The old galactic order, where strong species dominated weak ones, began to crumble. Wars of conquest became rare, because no one knew if Earth would intervene. The Black Armada remained on patrol, visible and ready. Human ships established outposts throughout known space, watching and waiting. They never attacked first. But everyone knew they were there. One day, Catherine found Robert standing in the observation deck of a space station, looking out at Earth below. Do you think we did the right thing? She asked. Robert was quiet for a long moment. We didn't want to be warriors. We wanted to explore, to learn, to grow. But the galaxy forced our hand. So we became what we needed to be. And now we make sure no one ever forces us to kneel again. And we help others do the same. Far across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, species that had lived in fear for generations looked up at the stars with new hope. The humans had proven something the galaxy thought impossible. That the strong could be defeated, that oppression could be resisted, that freedom was worth fighting for. The message was clear and simple, repeated in 1,000 languages across 1,000 worlds. We will not kneel. And neither should you.